Okay, thank you. Just not go ahead. Can you hear me? Okay. So the last session that we did, we looked at aspects of Ramadan in terms of Salatul Tadawih, and there were some other things that we didn't get a chance to say because the time ran short. So we're going to go with that today. So we want to preface everything by saying, for the past 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks, we've seen America and Israel, or Trump and Netanyahu, attacking Iran. And some individuals have been confused by the fact that because Iran, the majority of Iranians are Shia, Bulvar Shia, they were questions were arose about about making dua for them in terms of relief and so on. And uh, two camps came about. One saying, yeah, because they, quote unquote, they're Muslim, and others saying, nah, maybe not when we take a look at it, what it is that they state that they believe and what comes about with that. So what we want to do is to take a look at that circumstance. Okay. Since my phone is being used for this, something that one of the things I wanted to show you was a supposedly the Iranian general who gave the information to the Israelis and Americans that led to the bombing of the residence of the former supreme leader of Iran, Khamenei. And he was killed, several members of his family were killed. And so this person, uh, a close friend by the name of Ibrahim Al-Kubi, I don't know how he got the video, but he got the video. And so this general is sitting there and he says, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And then he takes out a 9mm pistol and shoots himself in the head and commits suicide. So the first conversation, some people say, well, maybe it was AI. The only problem with it, about it being AI, is that when he shot himself in the head, the blood burst out of his head profusely. He knocked down, and so, as he dies, the blood is still coming out of his head. And then you begin to hear people in the house begin to wail and scream about the fact that he shot himself. Well, in that particular instance, he doomed himself to the hellfire by the fact that he committed suicide. Okay. And from the Sunnah of the Prophet, a person commits suicide, and if they're not have mental problems and having done it, then whatever the means that they use to take their life, that's what they're going to be doing for eternity. Over for the house. So how if a person he shot himself in the head. So the ruling from Allah and His Messenger sallam, is that when a person commits suicide, if there's not something mentally wrong with them, okay, to where they didn't know what they were doing, despondent of what, and they commit suicide, however the means that they use to take their life, that's what they will be doing for eternity, over and over and over and over again. So in this particular case, the person shot themselves in the head. The caption said that he had made Toba, but the Toba is negated by the fact that he killed himself. Okay, he shot himself in the head in his residence. Yes.
So why did he kill himself?
He killed it. Well, he called it seeking Toba. They said that he sought Toba and he shot himself. Okay. I don't know if within the context of Shia and Shia Islam that doing so was an expression of his sorrow for what he had done.
What is it that he did?
He turned in, he gave the Americans and the Israelis the location of where Khamenei was living at with his family.
So in other words, he was like a spy?
He was a spy, traitor. All of them would apply. Israel and the U.S. Because even the Israelis said, even the Israelis said that, quote unquote, the information came from inside of the people there with him. They didn't get it from the outside on their own. It was given to them. And what they didn't say what the price was that was paid, but that it was given to them. Okay. So the other clip, I wish I could show it. Uh, it's taking place either in Lebanon or in Tehran itself. And it's a young guy from England. And he's becoming Shi'ah. The interesting thing about the clip is that you never hear him say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. I don't know if he made it before the clip, after this clip, but during the video, he doesn't say it. And what he's instructed to say is what we want to take a look at here and that. Okay, so when the clip starts, he's being told that two Shia imams sitting to his left, and there's another young man sitting to his right. And so they're telling him, one imam is saying, repeat after me. So what do you think it is that he was told to repeat? Just as a question, you already know. Okay, well, what do you think he was told to repeat? Because that's going to be the crux of what we're going to look at. Okay.
Before you look at that, you said that he was becoming a Shia.
Yeah.
Is that a thing, or was he a Shia in terms of he was already Muslim?
No, he was coming from not being quote unquote Muslim to embracing Shia Islam. Okay.
Oh, no, just to talk about. He was taking a different shahada than ours.
You could say that because what we recited in the clip, he doesn't say. Okay. It doesn't say, I'm not saying that he didn't say it, maybe before or after, but in the clip of what's there, he doesn't say it. You don't hear it. Okay. So the clip begins with one of the two imams, okay, telling him, repeat after me. Okay, repeat after me. Okay. Now keep in mind, we have to keep in mind that in the Quran, as far as the Sahaba are concerned, male and female, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, radiyallahu anhum, that he is pleased with them, radiyallahu an, and they are pleased with him. This is what's said, okay? Like in Surah Al-Bayyinah, all right? In other places in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that he openly refers to the Muhajirin and the Ansar, and again saying that he is pleased with them and they are pleased with him. Okay? So, and we make dua for the Sahaba, Ajma'in, meaning all of them. Okay? So then when you look at the hadith concerning how this first generation was chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, okay, there are several hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, and Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim. There's a particular one of the hadiths is from the Prophet ﷺ, is narrated by Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, and it says that when Allah looked at creation, meaning the humans that had been created, okay, he saw the heart of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he chose him for himself. This is the language that's used, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose him for himself, meaning to be his prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. After that's done, he goes back and looks again. and there's four, what will be four individuals are chosen because of the purity of their hearts to be his closest companions. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Radiallahu anhu. Then the third part of the hadith is that he goes back and he looks at the general aspect of those who will be the Sahaba. So all those individuals, men and women, who embraced Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already chosen it for them. And this becomes that first generation. And out of that first generation, these four are the closest to the Prophet of Islam. But in the hadith, the Prophet of Islam talks about others in terms of the Sahaba and the specialness that they had in certain instances. For about Abu Dhahr al-Ghafari, radiallahu anh, he says, no one remembered the Quran better than Abu Dhahr. Okay? He talks about Abdullah ibn Masud. He talks about any number of the other ones and how what they brought into Islam when they became Muslim. But the decree about them becoming Muslim, that generation, first generation that became Muslim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already decreed. Okay. There's another hadith and from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, where he says that he was with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and some of the other Sahaba, and they asked the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when did the mantle of prophethood come to you? That was the question. When did the mantle of prophethood come to you? And his answer took me aback when I read it, but then it made sense. The answer that he gave, he said that he was chosen to be prophet, to be Allah's prophet and his final messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while Adam, Prophet Adam alayhi salam, was between his spirit and being created. So, in other words, Adam hadn't come into existence yet when the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah chose him. That's when it was determined about his prophethood. Okay. So all of the hadith that I just narrated to you are all sound, no doubt. All of them are mutafaqun. They're all in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Okay. And some of the other Sahih Sitta and compilers of the hadith. So here we have this generation of the Sahaba, okay, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designated. Okay. They don't know it. They have no idea. But they hear the message and they do. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is that the other thing that you see is the aspect of, say, let's say Abu Jahl, before I get back to this aspect about this young man embracing, quote unquote, Shi'ah Islam and what he had to say. Abu Jahl, that we know, was not his name, his family name. His family name was Abu Hakim. Okay. Abu Jahl was the name that the Prophet ﷺ gave him. Okay. That the Prophet gave him. And at the Battle of Badr, oh, by the way, question. What was the date for the Battle of Badr? I tell you, it took place in Ramadan. No. 17th. 17th of Ramadan was the date for the Battle of Badr. Okay. So the Prophet ﷺ, there's an incident that takes place. Let me recount it very quickly. Abu Jahl immediately is against the Prophet ﷺ, along with Abu Lahab and others. But the only one that was more vehement about the Prophet ﷺ, even though the Prophet was his nephew, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is Abu Lahab. Okay. So Abu Jahl threatens the Prophet and says, stay away from the Kaaba. Don't come to the Kaaba. If you come to the Kaaba again, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to chase you away. And the other pagans who are there, they're urging Abu Jahl on. The Prophet ﷺ comes back to the Kaaba and he gets to make salah. And the people begin to get with Abu Jahl. Thought you said that if he came back, you were going to chase him away. So why aren't you doing it? So Abu Jahl says, I'm going to. And he goes to move toward the Prophet ﷺ, and he stops. He takes steps toward him and he stops. The Prophet ﷺ completes what he was doing and he leaves. So the people get on Abu Jahl and say, why didn't you chase him away? And Abu Jahl says to them, you didn't see what I saw. And so he explains that he saw what he saw were the angels that protect the hellfire, that they were protecting the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah made it so he could see them. Okay, so that's what he says. He says, like, you didn't see what I saw. Okay. The Battle of Badr comes on the 17th of Ramadan. Two young boys, teenagers, during the battle, they wound Abu Jahl. And he's laying out there. The Prophet ﷺ, after the battle, he asks, where is Abu Jahl? And he sends Abdullah ibn Masud to find him. And Abdullah ibn Masud does find him. Okay. Abu Jahl, his last words are that his arrogance is still there. He looks, because Abdullah ibn Masud had been a slave. And so he laments the fact that his life is going to be taken by a slave, that if he's going to lose his life, it should be someone of his station. Okay. Well, it wasn't. Abdullah ibn Masud kills him, cuts his head off, and takes it back to the Prophet ﷺ to show that he's dead. When that happens, the Prophet ﷺ said about Abu Jahl, he says, quote, Abu Jahl was the Pharaoh of his people. Okay? Think about that for a minute. The Pharaoh of his people. So if we draw an analogy, and I wrap this point up, but I'll come back to it. You could look at both Netanyahu and Trump and put that on them. They are the pharaohs of their people. No ifs, no ands, no buts. That's my personal opinion. But if you look at it and you look in the Quran, what is said just in the conversation between Musa alayhi salam and Pharaoh and his arrogance and who he was, there's no difference here, okay, in terms of that. So this young man, so say like right here, these four. In the clip, there's one young man sitting where Brother Salim is, right here. You have the guy, he's British, okay, where mine is sitting. And then here are the two Shi'ah imams, okay? And so the one that where Brother Shamsuddin is says to the young Britisher, repeat after me. And this is what he says. His first statements are, he says, he swears by Allah. Okay, he swears by Allah. And that he hopes that Hafsa, the daughter of Abu Bakr, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, Aisha, radiallahu an, Umar, Abu Bakr, and Uthman. He swears that he hopes that they are all in the hellfire. Yeah, that they're all in the hellfire. Again, Hafsa, Aisha, Umar, Uthman, and Abu Bakr. They're all in the hellfire. As he's making this statement and saying that, he swears by Allah that this is what he's praying and hoping for. And what he's saying is, he says that in doing this, that he rejects them.
You speak in English.
Huh? It's being translated.
So the British speak in Arabic.
They're speaking in Arabic. He's replying in Arabic. It's just like if we have a brother here or a sister taking shahada and we say, repeat, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Okay, they're going through the same process. Okay.
He has no idea.
Yeah, he does. That's the point. Okay. So he says, what he's saying is, the statement, the first statement is that he rejects Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Aisha, and Hafsa. That he rejects them. Okay. The next statement he says is that he prays that they will be cursed by Allah. He says, as far as the Arabic verb la'ana means to curse.
What is it again?
La'ana.
La'ana.
La'ana means to curse. Okay? So he now says that he prayed, not only does he reject them, but he prays that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will curse them and place them in the hellfire. Once he makes that statement, they stand up, they embrace him, and now he's a 12 Shi'ah. Okay, and let me explain that before I go any farther. The Shi'ah have these series of imams. Okay, they consider the first one to have been Ali's son Hussein, and then there are others. The 12th one now, when he came into being he was a young boy and he died. But in the 12 Shi'ah, their belief is that if you are an Ayatollah, like Ayatollah Khomeini was, a Khamenei, of these others, that they have direct contact with him, actually speak with him, get advice from him. And what they say is that he's in occultation, hiding. Okay? In Pakistan, you have 12 Shi'ah and 7ers. 7ers because they reject the last 5 imams that came. Okay? In Syria, you have what are called, sometimes they're called the Alawats, but they're called Nusayrin. Okay? The individuals in Syria, this is what Hafiz Assad was, and they're the minority in Syria before all the killing took place of Bashar Assad, his son. And keep in mind, we're looking at this saying, should we be making dua for these individuals? You don't want to see anyone die or get killed. But then you're looking at what they've said. Okay. The Nusayrin in Syria, also called the Alawats. That word Alawat translates out to worshippers of Ali. So if you were in Syria and you were attending a masjid and the adhan was being called and it was an Alawat masjid, there's an added phrase that they put into the adhan that we don't. So as we say, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, they say that, and then they say Ashhadu anna Ali. because for the Nusayrim, their belief is that Jibril made a mistake. Now, of course, we know that angels cannot even begin to think about disobeying Allah. But they say that Jibril made a mistake, that he was supposed to take the revelation that took place with the Prophet ﷺ in the cave of Hira. It was supposed to go to Ali.
What's their proof?
Huh? The proof is for them. They say that the Quran that we use has been corrupted. They blame one of the reasons that they curse Abu Bakr is because they said that Abu Bakr took the ayahs out of the Quran that said that the revelation should have went to the Prophet ﷺ. I mean, right, right. Yeah, to Ali. Thank you.
That he removed that.
That he removed it. And so the Quran that they have in Iran that they use supposedly has the ayats in it where that Abu Bakr took out. Okay? But the idea that Jibril made a mistake. Okay? Also, with the Nusayrim, how many salat do we make? And don't nobody look at me and say, you already know the answer to that. How many salat do we make? Five. How many? Five, right? Nusayrim only make three. And they say because there's nothing in the Quran that points to the praying of Salatul Maghrib and Salatul Isha. Okay? So, this young man stands up after he made those statements of them to be cursed, that he rejects them and then praying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will curse them. He's grabbed and hugged. Okay? In another clip that I saw, took place in Lebanon. On the news, you hear about this group called Hizbullah. This phrase is actually in the Quran. Translated means party of God. But the Hizbullah in Lebanon is Shi'ah, just like the Shi'ah in Iran. Okay? So when this Sunni, to use that term, Muslim from Lebanon, was talking to a Shia imam in Lebanon, and he asked him a question. The question he asked this Shia imam that he was talking to, and it was an older guy, older. He was like, gray beard and stuff. He asked him, he said, is there any way that I, as a Sunni Muslim, can achieve paradise? And this older brother looked at him and said, absolutely not. Said, if you and the other Sunnis don't come over to being Shia, all of you will be in the hellfire on the last day. All of you. So they don't look at us as being Muslim. We're just as bad or worse than those who don't believe. And he got so involved in his answers, he was crying profusely. He finally yelled at the young man and said, well, how can that be? He said, because you reject the imams, meaning the 12 imams. And he said, you have love for the Sahaba because they curse all of the Sahaba except Fatima and the twin sons that Ali had by her, Hassan and Hussein. So for them, the individuals about whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that he is pleased with them and they are pleased with him, they curse emphatically. And they curse anyone who looks at them with respect and love, meaning us. It's so, when that circumstance happens like that, one of the Islamic scholars, his name was Saleh Al-Fawzan, and he was asked this question at a presentation that he did. And I watched on the clip that the tears welled up in his eyes. And he said, how is it possible that you can have any sympathy for those who curse the very individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said what he said about them? And he said the other thing that they don't say and talk about was that Ali rejected them. There was more than once that people, because this word Shi'ah in Arabic simply means party. And even during the time of Ali, there was a group, at the time of the Prophet, there were a group of people that after the Prophet died, they were adamant that Ali should have been the first Khalifa. Ali, for his part, radiallahu anh, he never did anything but accept the leadership of Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. The only thing he said to them was, I will support you as long as you follow the Quran and the Sunnah. And that's what he did. Okay? So when we look at this carnage that's taking place right now, you know, the devastation. I think the deaths in Iran now are over 2,000 from the bombings and stuff. And there's other stuff, you know, that's going on. When you look at that, you know, we, like I said, we don't want to see people die. Okay? You don't want to see people die as such war. So like the girls' school that was hit. And the reason I said, like, you know, this aspect about these individuals being Theron is that first Trump tried to say that the Iranians did it themselves. Made no common sense. But then they found the wreckage of the missile that hit the school. There's only one country on the planet that has Tomahawk cruise missiles, and that's America. That technology, they don't give to anybody else, America. That missile that was used that hit that school, only America has it. It's made in America, manufactured, and it's not given to anybody else, period. And so they found part of the wreckage to show, okay? So, but you get into that circumstance, we don't want to see the death and destruction. But at the same time, you know, you're talking about in individuals that they look at us and they say that we're cursed because we're not following them. That's what they say. And then you learn certain things about what they do. So, for example, when you see them make salat, notice a Shia will not come into this masjid if he's really practicing Shiism and pray with us. Not going to happen. And the first time that I was in Abu Dhabi, when my first experience being in, they stopped me and said, "You can't go in there and pray." And I'm like, "Why not?" It's a masjid. Okay. It's a masjid. They said, "No, it's a Shia masjid." Ah, okay. Understood in terms of that. So sometimes you will see them standing up and you see them hitting themselves on the chest like this. That is them punishing themselves because of, at the Battle of Karbala, the troops that were supposed to come in to support Ali's son, Hussein, never showed up. And he's killed at Karbala. So this part of the Salat is them flagellating themselves out of being sorry that the troops that were supposed to get to help Hussein, that they never showed up. Okay. Let me give you some background of that, so I don't want to leave you hanging. It becomes important because Abu Bakr as-Siddiq died of natural causes, old age. But the other three individuals of the Khalifa Rashidun all were assassinated. Umar was attacked and killed while he was praying Fajr. Uthman was killed while he was reading Quran. And Ali was assassinated. Okay. So how did this, what they call the great fitna, begin? When Uthman is killed, the same process that ended up with selecting Abu Bakr after the death of the Prophet ﷺ to be the Khalifa, the commander of the faithful, took place with him. He had two choices. He could either immediately go after the individuals who killed Uthman, or take the time to make sure that the transition to him being Khalifa and everything was as it should be, fine. That's what he did, the second choice. Uthman's cousin, by the name of Muawiyah, who was a Sahaba, was the governor of Syria. So here you have to expand your minds and think about the size of what he was governing. Syria at that time was Syria, Palestine, Jordan. All of that was Syria, as Sham, as it was called. He's the governor. He takes issue with Ali because he won't go after the killers of Uthman. Uthman is his cousin. And ultimately, this argument ends up in civil war. Now, some of the other Sahaba, like Bilal ibn Rabah, when they see that they can't stop this from happening, they leave and go elsewhere. They will not be witness to the greatest harm that the Prophet ﷺ said that could come about of Muslim killing Muslim. Ali's forces and Muawiyah's forces meet at a place called Siffin, spelled Siffen, the Battle of Siffin. It lasts for 6 days. It's touch and go, but on the 5th into the 6th day, Ali's forces begin to get close to victory. A famous Sahaba by the last name of Marwan, this individual Marwan is the Sahaba who commands the forces that conquer Egypt in 671. He says to Muawiyah, look, we should seek negotiation to mediate. And Muawiyah says, why? He says, because in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if you're fighting and your enemy wants to sue for peace, you sue for peace. And in this instance, it's advice because they're Muslim Sahaba killing Sahaba. Muawiyah says, okay. So they contact Ali and say, we want to negotiate. When Ali does this and says, yeah, because it would be better for us not to be killing each other, he indirectly puts Muawiyah on the same level that he is. Okay? He puts Muawiyah on the same level as he is. The fighting stops, but there's a tremendous fitna that happens. Amongst Ali's supporters, a great number of them say, no negotiations. He's rebelled against the lawful ruler, the Khalifa. What we need to do is to kill him and anybody that supports him. Ali refuses. These group of individuals In English, they call it Kharijites. In Arabic, they're called the Kharaj. It comes from the Arabic verb kharaja. This Arabic verb, kharajin, kharaja, means to go out, to leave. Okay, if I was in a sentence and I said, I left my house. Okay, that's the verb that I would use to say that I left my house. So it means to go out, but why were they considered as being those who went out? Because the fitna that they bring, they look at Muawiyah and say, his blood is lawful because he rebelled against the Khalifa. And they look at Ali and say he should be killed because he wouldn't take the steps to punish Muawiyah when he had the opportunity to do so. So what do? They send two assassination teams, one to kill Muawiyah and one to kill Ali. The one that was sent to Damascus to kill Muawiyah fails, but the one sent to kill Ali, for whatever reasons that Allah intended, succeeded. So now there's no Khalifa. And remember I said, when Muawiyah Ali chose to negotiate with him, it indirectly put Muawiyah on the same level as Ali in terms of his position. So the next thing that happens is Muawiyah, from the Sahaba that are remaining, they select Muawiyah to be the Khalifa. He's the fifth Khalifa. Okay? He is a Sahaba. He moves the capital from Medina to Damascus. But he does something else that has been a plague upon Islam since he did it. And that was in every situation where, when the Prophet died, the people agreed on Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. When Abu Bakr as-Siddiq died, the people agreed on Umar ibn al-Khattab. And the people agreed on Uthman ibn Affan and with Ali. But Muawiyah designates his son to be Khalifa when he dies. His son's name is Yazid, and he's terrible. Okay? A worse person couldn't have been picked to be Khalifa.
What does all this have to do with the war going on now?
Because this is where the split comes, Sunni and Shi'ah. It comes out of this. Because what happens next is that there's still supporters of Ali alive. They go to his two sons, who are adults, the twin sons, Hassan and Hussein, and they ask, will you wage war to overthrow Yazid? Hassan is in Mecca, and he said no. Hussein is in Iraq. Okay. When what is Iraq comes under Muslim control, there are two cities that exist to this very day that are established. One, Basra. Basra, Basra, and the other one, Kufa, Kufa. Ali resides in Kufa. Okay, so it's important because when Hussein is approached, he says he will, and he's promised as he moves towards Mecca that support will come. The support never shows up. What does show up is an army from Damascus, 15,000 soldiers. And they're under the command of the wazir, Yazid's wazir, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. And it's important because at the battle that takes place, Karbala, Karbla, Karbala, AH, Hussein and everybody except a few women and children are wiped out. Hussein is, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf had him beheaded, puts his head on a spike, and sends it back to Damascus to show Yazid that he's dead. Okay. The importance here is that this is the beginning of Shia Islam. This is what it folds out of. Okay. So over time, Hussein becomes almost a god. Every year, the Battle of Karbala is celebrated. And you see the self-flagellation, you see individuals, some of them with chains, in unison, flogging themselves. Some of them will have leather straps with a blade on the end, and they will beat themselves until they're bloody out of the remorse that the troops that were promised to Hussein didn't show up. But Hussein is their first imam, the first imam. So, walaikum salam. So when you get that circumstance, this is the beginning of Shia Islam. Okay, so there's a city in Iraq called An-Najaf, big masjid there. This is where the Battle of Karbala took place. Okay, and so when America invaded Iraq, supposedly no one was going to be allowed to go to that city and where that masjid is, where Karbala was. Where the Battle of Karbala took place. That's where this masjid is in An-Najaf. It's a city in Iraq. So America invades Iraq, and they say to the people, they say basically, nobody can come to this city.
This time or
Another time before. Nobody can come to the city. But this is to show you that in Baghdad, there was a guy by the name of Ali Sistani. He was the Ayatollah for Iraq. Okay, he was the Ayatollah for Iraq. He was 92 years old. Walaikum salam. He gets on the radio and he says to the people in Iraq, he said one sentence, I will meet you in An-Najaf. And 350,000 people ended up in An-Najaf. And there was nothing Americans can do about it. Okay. So I'm saying this to say that when we look at this circumstance, this war now, this is what Israel and Trump are up against. They're up against individuals who, as far as being giving up, not fighting, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Okay, that's their history. Okay, they don't give up. They will resist and fight and fight and fight. Okay, and so when you see, but the thing here is, we have to be careful because how do you pray for someone that is cursing us? They curse us because that imam said point blank, you will never go to paradise if you don't become Shi'ah. And that's the way that they look at us. Here we have a whole generation about whom Allah has said He's pleased with them and they are pleased with Him. And they curse all of them. When you come to the hadith, they will not accept any hadith. The hadith that we say that are sound from Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, they reject outright.
Would they have their own?
Yes, they do. And the book of hadith that they have It's called a kakafy.
Who?
Kakafy.
Hakafi?
Kakafy. And what you notice about the hadith and the kakafy, the prophet is there, he's zero. Because in dealing with the isnad, the chain of narrators, they count with the prophet being zero. The Sahaba is one. And their hadith that they have in the kakafy, there's no one. Period.
Okay, so they don't take it from this.
No, they don't take. Okay. Whereas with Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, if you don't, in their strident aspect of judging the hadith, if you don't have the Sahaba, the hadith is rejected.
So it's 706.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's about.
So right now in this moment,
Mhm.
you know, there's how do we deal with this? I mean, that's like a rhetorical question, but
For me, I look at it and say that whatever it is that Allah intends, that's what it's going to be in terms of that. But Allah is best to know why He does what He does. Okay. But in terms of looking at them and saying and making dua and stuff, like personally, I don't. I don't want to see.
pray for peace. That's something.
But remember, I've heard people say that, pray for peace in different circumstances concerning Muslims. But remember, quote unquote, translation in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about war, He says, sometimes you dislike a thing that is good for you. He says, sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in translation, it says that sometimes you dislike a thing that is good for you in reference to war. Okay? That sometimes that's what's necessary. That's what has to be done. Okay? You want peace, but at the same time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, yes, and sometimes, you know, concerning war, sometimes meaning to us, you dislike a thing that's good for you.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, outside of Islam, people from the outside looking in,
Mm-hmm.
they are feeling remorseful to what's happening to Iranians.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're praying that God shows mercy on them,
Mm-hmm.
are we as Muslims, we're the only ones not?
Some Muslims do.
I'm just,
Some, no, I'm not judging them. Yeah, that's what I said. Allah knows best, right? Allah knows best. But I could say that as far as the Iranians are concerned, the basis of what happened to them is does it qualify for what they're doing as being jihad? Yes, it does. Okay. Yes, it does. Okay. But at the same time, me personally, I deal with the fact that as much as I want to see these Kafirs be defeated, okay, I also know that there's no remorse about any one of us dying. And if we die and don't become Shi'ah as far as they're concerned, we're going straight to hell. Right. So I was like, right, right in the middle, right. So it's what Allah intends. So in that, I hope I wasn't confusing. Huh? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They there's a lot of things that they do. Like for example, you yeah, you'll see Shia sometimes when they make a salat, they will have a stone that they put down on the carpet. When they prostrate, their forehead is on the stone. not because it makes a mark of prostration, but because their belief is that their forehead should not touch the ground, period. Okay? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر جزاك الله خير.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله